I'm an American who's been traveling the world and living abroad for nearly 2 years. And in that time, I have experienced a great deal of culture shock. But no country has provided me with as much culture shock as my home country, the United States of America. And if you don't believe me, believe them. Because in this video, I will be reacting to other Americans experiencing reverse culture shock after living abroad.
I'm an American. I was living abroad and I just recently moved back to the US. Don't ask me why. Actually, the answer's on my page. So if you want to go look at the videos, you can, okay? So I was living in Austria for about like 6-7 years almost, and I just moved back to LA, and the reverse culture shock, guys, is jarring to say the least. Okay, first of all, I thought part-time work in the US was like up until 19 hours, so basically at 20 hours you receive benefits. And for my Europeans, yes, literally you can work up to a certain amount of hours in the US and not receive any kind of benefits at all. No healthcare, no retirement, nothing. Okay, no, today my friend informed me that it's not 20 hours, but it's 30 hours. Okay, so you can work 29 hours and not be receiving any health care, no retirement, nothing. This doesn't exist in Austria, okay? Literally from hour number 1, you get benefits. With exceptions, there are exceptions to the rule, but basically everybody has benefits in Austria. What is even this place?
Okay, I'm back in America. I lived in Italy for 2 years and I just had the craziest reverse culture shock. So I'm sitting at this cafe, and obviously in Florence especially, but Italy, there's like pickpocketing and all that. This guy leaves his phone, his laptop, his backpack, everything at this table, like right next to me, gets up and walks to the bathroom. And I'm like freaking out. Is that normal in America? I grew up here, but I was in shock. Nothing. And just no one stole it. No one touched it. His phone. Literally left his phone. You can't even put your phone in your back pocket without it getting stolen in Florence. You can't have it in your purse with it unzipped without it getting stolen. Let alone leaving it on a table, getting up and walking away. I just wonder, like, why is stealing, pickpocketing so big in Europe? Like, it doesn't happen in America. At least in California. It doesn't happen like that. Then I went to the grocery store and this lady just had her purse wide open in the cart. Just wide open. Left the carts walking away. No one's gonna steal anything. No one's taking anything. Like, it's so crazy. Like, you could never do that in Florence.
I have been on U.S. soil for less than a week, and a man has already asked me what I bring to the table. So I actually thought it was an exaggeration of like watching things on social media, how men behave around women, but it may not be. So what was really interesting about this man who asked me what I bring to the table when I told him that I was a stay-at-home wife or mom or whatever, he had previously told me a story of how he's living in a trailer park in a trailer with no windows. Now, I did not judge this situation. I actually thought, wow, this guy must be on the other side of like a life change, like on the more positive side, because obviously he's working past something, through something, whatever. That's all I thought. But this man, when I told him that I was like, you know, I'm a wife or whatever, he called me disgusting. He proceeded to tell me how it is that my partner would likely find a younger woman, and what would I do after that? I told him that's what spousal support is for, and he lost his mind. And that's when he went into, but what do you bring to the table? You're obviously after this man's money. He's so concerned. Now, I don't know if he has a table in this windowless place in which he lives, but I thought it was awful interesting that this man, who obviously does not have very much to offer someone, was hugely bothered by the fact that I was a stay-at-home mother. Now, it seems also interesting because he was pretty much flirting with me before that. Now, these exchanges were happening at my high school class reunion. So these were well adulted men. They've been adulting for a while at different levels, obviously, but they've been adulting. Now, another man comes over while I'm talking to a group of women, and he goes, "How old are you guys?" Now, like I said, we're at our high school class reunion. So we look at each other and we look at him and we're like, you realize we're pretty much all the same age because we all graduated high school the same year. And so he then proceeds to tell us that we were all too old for his sperm. Sperm that none of us said we were interested in. He actually said, "I wouldn't give you old ladies my high valued sperm." None of us, we were actually like thanking him for that. We said, "Great, that is actually exactly what we were hoping for, that you would not actually want to give us anything that you had to offer." I haven't even been here a week. I haven't been here a week. And I've already experienced what American women must be experiencing on a regular basis from, well, the men. I'm sorry, guys. I'm so sorry.
I'm not gonna lie, high value sperm is absolutely insane, but we'll touch on dating culture later on. If you see me looking off to the side, it's because I took a lot of notes while watching these videos because we just have a lot to talk about here. So for starters, the part-time cutoff thing. That's something that I was never really aware of because I only ever worked part-time jobs. But I didn't know that in other countries, I guess specifically in Austria, you get benefits literally no matter how many hours you work. That sounds amazing. I mean, look, when I worked at my part-time jobs, especially around the holidays, they would almost cap our hours out to where if we worked any more hours, we would become full-time. Especially when you're picking up other people's shifts and you're working a little extra on each shift, things of that nature. I mean, it wasn't uncommon for me to pull maybe 35 hours around the holidays, 35-ish hours per week for a couple of weeks. And rest assured, I did not see any benefits at all other than pay. That was it. No paid vacation, no healthcare benefits, none of that at all. And look, I'm not the most informed on this subject matter because after working part-time, I jumped directly into self-employment. So I've never actually had a job with those kinds of benefits before. But it's my understanding that even amongst full-time employers in Europe, they have much better benefits, namely the longer paid vacations. And while it may seem like a big benefit that a lot of American employers will, full-time employers that is, will supply you with healthcare benefits, what that really tells me is that the system is inefficient. Because then you become reliant on your employer, who, by the way, is an at-will employer in the United States of America, meaning that they could fire you at will at any given time for pretty much any given reason, as long as it doesn't pertain to discrimination, which they can always find a loophole for that. Different discussion for a different day. But the point is, you are placing a lot of trust into these corporations by working at a full-time job in America. Hence why I decided to jump straight into self-employment. Now, on the topic of America and putting trust into people in America, the next thing that we need to talk about is theft and crime. So look, I don't like to try to invalidate other people's experiences. I mean, I've heard that in Italy and Spain in particular, I don't know why it's those two countries. If you know more about that, then let me know in the comments. But Italy and Spain are really, really bad when it comes to pickpocketing. Now, I've also heard that that was the case across all of Europe. I never got pickpocketed. I never got pickpocketed in Europe. Granted, I always try to sort of keep my wits about me. I'm never inebriated, things of that nature. I'm always keeping track of my surroundings to the best of my ability. But I've never really encountered that. But I have seen video compilations on YouTube of people getting pickpocketed in those countries. However, I have also seen video compilations of people in the USA being not pickpocketed, but straight up robbed. And if you don't know what I mean, let me give you an example. So the girl said she was from California. I'm really glad she said that because California is a perfect example of this. There are groups of people who will literally walk into stores, usually wearing ski masks and hoodies so you can't identify them. They will walk into stores and literally grab armloads full of stuff and just walk out. Literally, you can look this up for yourself. Look up LA, I think they're called flash mobs or something like that. You'll have 30 people just run up in a store and just clear it out, clear out the inventory. They'll run up in the Apple store. They might go in the car dealership and steal the cars. And you might be thinking, well, at least they're stealing from corporations. They're not stealing from other people. Yeah, negative. Okay, California is especially really bad about property crime. When we talk about stealing people's property, look up San Francisco car break-in, and you will go down a rabbit hole that will have you never, ever wanting to visit San Francisco, which is a shame, by the way, because I spent maybe a few hours in San Francisco on a layover earlier this year, and I actually enjoyed myself. San Francisco seemed like a really nice city, but I couldn't actually relax into the atmosphere because when I went to rent the car, the guy showed a map of where to be very cautious when parking the car, and it literally covered the whole entire city. And the reason why you have to be cautious is because people out there are breaking into cars to steal anything. Literally anything. If you have, let's say, for example, a charging cable in the car, they'll break in and steal that. They have devices that will tell them if you have any electronics in the car. All right, they're on some James Bond level stuff out there. So I don't know where she got this notion that theft and property crime are not happening in the US, but that is simply false. Statistically, I don't know if it's any worse or better than Italy. I can't comment on that. What I do know is that anecdotally, San Francisco, at the very least, and just California in general, which, again, I'm only using California because that's where she's from, it's not really the best example of a place where you are free from property crime. Now, I saw a few comments under that TikTok insinuating that this perceived safety from property crime is due to the prevalence of gun ownership. To me, that's not really a good thing. If guns are the only reason why people aren't stealing things, maybe you need to reassess how your society is set up, because you know what that reminds me of? I've watched a lot of videos about prison, specifically prisons in the US, so I can't comment on prisons in other countries, but in the US, it's my understanding that you will see some of the best manners in prison. People saying, excuse me, please, thank you, so on and so forth. People will walk all the way around the chow hall just to go to their table because they don't want to cut in between tables. You'll see some very well-mannered people there. And the reason why is because the threat of violence and or death is very high. And so, to me, basically, those people saying that gun ownership is a good thing because it lessens property crime is the equivalent to saying prison is a good environment because people will kill you if you act out. I don't know, it just doesn't make sense to me. The logic just seems broken in my head, but let me know what you think in the comments about that. Now, as far as tipping goes, okay, on the topic of theft, tipping, listen, that is a real thing. I don't really know when they started doing that, but it does feel like most places in the US will have that little screen, and it's so awkward. It's so awkward. Look, I'm a pretty socially awkward person to begin with. I know you probably wouldn't think it just from watching my videos, but in real life, I'm actually a fairly socially awkward person. I've been working on it, but I'm still socially awkward. And they'll turn the screen around and then they'll kind of act like they're looking away. And I mean, it's just so weird because you know they're going to see what you put on there. And I just don't like it. I just don't like being put in those kinds of situations, at least at restaurants when you're supposed to tip or whatever. They'll give you the check and they'll walk away. At least they walk away so you can kind of do it in private. But when you're doing it on the spot or there are people behind you and they can see, it's just really uncomfortable. I don't know. And also, why should you have to tip somebody when they're not even really delivering you anything? When I worked at H&M at the cash register, I never expected anyone to tip me because I was getting paid by my employer. Granted, I wasn't getting any benefits from my employer like I talked about earlier, but I was still getting paid my hourly wage. I think I was making $11.25 an hour, something like that at that time, which was big money for me at the time. But I never got any tips, nor did I ever expect any tips. So that's definitely something the US needs to do away with, in my opinion. Bring back the tip jars for coins. Bring that back. Replace the screens with that. Now, as far as grocery selection goes, that is something that I've come to realize is very unnecessary. And I know it sounds like I'm just complaining, I'm just talking bad about the US. Look, I'm just calling it like I see it. I didn't see most of these things before I traveled abroad, but now that my mind has been expanded, it can never return to its original dimensions, as they say. And when you realize that, I'm only gonna buy the same 20-ish products on a week-by-week basis. You know what you're gonna buy. You know the things that you tend to eat. Very few people are adventurous enough to consistently try things that they've never purchased before. I mean, you're spending your hard-earned money. You're in the US, you may not have benefits on your part-time job, so you're spending what little money you have to go get groceries. You're not going to go and get some exotic cereal flavor. You're going to get the same old Frosted Flakes and Cocoa Puffs that you've always gotten. Cinnamon Toast Crunch. You're going to get the same stuff that you've always gotten, so it just doesn't really make much sense to me to have 100 different cereal options. Now, on the topic of selection, let's get into the real stuff, the real tea, dating culture. Dating culture in the US is admittedly very, very strange. And there's actually this whole movement that is emerging from the shadows called passport bros. I don't know if there is a female equivalent for that, but passport bros is kind of what it sounds like. It's basically men traveling the world in pursuit of love, or I guess in many cases, lust. And while I could sit here and admonish that movement as unnecessary or extra, I have to take a look at my situation and remember that my girlfriend is from a different country as well. And my mom is from a different country. So I guess you could say my dad and I are both passport bros in our own ways. Granted, we didn't go overseas looking for love, and my girlfriend and I actually started dating before I had ever been to Europe. If it wasn't for her, I probably never would have went to Europe, and you wouldn't be watching these videos, but I digress. I feel like what this really tells me is that American men and women are not on the same page at this point in time. They're not on the same page, and look, there are plenty of great American women and great American men out there. It's just that for whatever reason, they have trouble finding each other. And I don't know why that's the case. And I don't know if this is a worldwide phenomenon or if this is uniquely American. I don't know if it's maybe more generational as well. There are a lot of different factors that come into this, but what I do know is that asking someone what they bring to the table while you live in what equates to a shipping container is incredibly rich.